Banjo-Kazooie is a rare game, because it's made by Rare. Banjo-Kazooie is something I've always had a fringe awareness of. For the better part of my life, I've heard nothing but praise, love, and genuine worship for this title from more or less the second I got into gaming. Young me probably looked at this and went, "This isn't Mario," and didn't pursue it any further. But that kid was a fucking idiot, because now having finished it, I can safely say that Banjo-Kazooie is a near perfect example of everything a 3D platformer should strive to be. But don't just take my broad praise for it, stick around and help my watch time as I give my thoughts on everything that makes Banjo-Kazooie great, as well as the few dampers on its ambition that don't hold up as well as they could. Before you do though, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications each and every time that I upload, leave a like, and comment any and all suggestions on how to improve these videos going forward. Let's get into it. Our story begins with Gruntilda the Witch, antagonist and low-hanging fruit for fat, ugly, gross, stupid, and just about every kind of demeaning joke you could think of. Anyways, she has like a Snow White moment where she sees Tootie, a cute, inexplicably blonde bear, and little sister to protagonist Banjo. No, but seriously, why is a bear blonde? Like, what? Gruntilda, or Grunty as she's often called, is jealous of Tootie and creates a machine that can transfer one creature's beauty to another, with the hopes of stealing Tootie's beauty and leaving Tootie as a disfigured green monster, much like herself. Grunty kidnaps Tootie while Banjo is sleeping, and his red-feathered bird friend Kazooie overhears the commotion outside and wakes him up. With the move mentorship of Tootie's friend Bottles the Mole, they set out to scour Grunty's lair for musical notes, jigsaw pieces, affectionately referred to as jiggies, and of course Jinjos, weird little pterodactyl creatures that Grunty kidnapped and trapped in these worlds. All of this they do with the hope of rescuing Tootie and taking down Gruntilda. A key element that helps Banjo-Kazooie to both distinguish itself from and inspire future 3D platformers is its colossal cast of characters. But even more than the size of the cast, it's the level of dedication that went into creating personalities for all these characters. Banjo is a dopey and laid back but polite brown bear, the perfect qualities for a main protagonist. Kazooie, meanwhile, couldn't be further from this. She's an obnoxious, rude, and fourth wall breaking brat who relishes in bullying the meek mole mentor Bottles, just for the fun of it. And the banter that they have is legendary, let me just tell you. Not to mention that whole genre parodying content of what she says. A situation like a bird being thrilled to learn how to fly from a mole is about as self-referential as you can get. Why would a bird not know how to fly? Because this is a platformer and you need a tutorial, of course. Gruntilda is another standout character. Not only is her habit of insulting you in rhyme charming, but the disturbing tidbits you receive from her much nicer sister Brentilda flesh out just how gross Grunty is. Across the board though, even the most minor characters, like I'm talking enemies in the level, have the personality brought out of them thanks to the cartoony, almost rubber hose era style and animation all said models have. Beehives squeamishly jump on the spot as they dread being attacked by Banjo and Kazooie, Jinjos fly into the air on being rescued, and Gruntlings traipse around the lair raising their fists in anger when you get too close. Not to mention, all the characters talk in that garbled gibberish voiceover that further lends itself to the game's charm. I could keep going, but suffice to say the characters and visuals of this experience are absolutely top tier. Actually, I will keep going because my god, these visuals, like this is how you make N64 games age well. The whole cartoon aesthetic is so zany and charms me so much more than any other game I've played from the system, really. The consistency from gameplay to cutscene art style is excellent. The idle animations for all the characters keep the world alive even without your input, and hell, even the file select screen is a little slice of heaven. On the gameplay front, Banjo-Kazooie again passes with flying colours. Rare took the buddy system of the Donkey Kong Country games to new heights with a profoundly sophisticated moveset and control scheme. The whole thing controls really well with some of the best physics I've seen in a game of this era. Slowing down movements such as running, flying, and swimming might seem like a negative, but in return for those small sacrifices, the handling and controls for Banjo-Kazooie are infinitely better than something more slippery like Mario 64. You also have numerous options for camera control which further enhance the ease of play and cut down on unfair deaths and such. Banjo does all the basic running, jumping, swimming and such. He's really just a reliable all-rounder. On the flip side, Kazooie can just do everything. Carry you through the air? Yep. Fire eggs at enemies? Of course. Give you the extra air to backflip? Why not? She really is just a jack of all trades, and as bratty as she might be, her competence absolves her of that. There's also a wealth of Mumbo skulls hidden all over the game's worlds, which can be exchanged with Mumbo Jumbo to learn various animal transformations. These are similar to the ones in Donkey Kong Country, but I would actually say better. They're always awesome to look at, as well as opening up so many new moves that you can't use in your bear and bird form. I also see a lot of what Mario Odyssey did with its capture mechanic, drawing inspiration from this element. Just crazy ahead of its time, truly. After all the gushing I gave you, you might think that me saying the level design is the best part of this game is just too much. But it honestly is the best part of this game. Like, as good as everything else is, the level design still manages to radiate so much brilliance. Every area that you traverse is not only teeming with collectibles to be tracked down, but also manages to create a perfect playground to do so in. The inventiveness that went into the theming and ideas for every level is on another level. Okay, now the word level sounds weird. Anyways, every one of these encourages understanding and mastery. Ahead of its time once again, you don't get booted out every time you find a Jiggy, and because of this, I often realized I was spending several hours completing every level. But they're just so immersive that you don't even realize how long it's been. Dying and needing to get all the notes for a level again is an infuriating system, but you can bet that the next time you enter the level again, you'll have a much better understanding of where everything is and which quests you need to complete first. Nothing is a waste of time here because you'll come out the other end feeling really satisfied and fondly remembering the level you just finished, as well as looking forward to what's to come. These aren't like the sort of levels that you play once and forget. They stick with you long after you finish the game. They stick to your ribs, in a sense. They're just that memorable. But even outside the levels, the hub is a masterpiece. Gruntilda's lair itself contains all the levels, but you'll need to collect Jiggies as well as expand your moveset to reach all of them. The idea to separate the world's entry from the puzzle which lets you access it also enhances the experience. It forces you to understand the layout of the lair in order to backtrack to the various puzzles and then again in finding the level entrance itself. That way, even the act of entering a level feels earned. On top of that, there's plenty of helpful secrets scattered around the hub, so even getting aimlessly lost can often lead to finding something you otherwise might have missed. The emphasis on completion for a collectathon platformer such as this is a no-brainer, but the incentives for doing this are pretty solid. It's nothing crazy like extra levels or anything, but a sneak peek at the sequel as well as the chance to unlock a double health bar are incentive enough, with the latter coming in very handy for the last stretch of the game. Even though some might find these underwhelming, the journey to completion really is a reward unto itself, and finding these collectibles never feels like anything short of unadulterated joy. This tone extends into the soundtrack as well. Composer Grant Kirkhope perfectly encapsulates the offbeat and goofy tone every other element of the game shares. The ambience of something like David Wise's Donkey Kong Country soundtrack is beautiful in a wholly different way, but I'm really glad Rare put Kirkhope at the helm of Banjo's soundtrack, because I really couldn't see the experience being the same without his quirky sonic palette and vision. The soundtrack truly is a joy from start to finish. It pains me to admit it, but Banjo-Kazooie doesn't stay good all the way through. I really wanted to give this game a 10, but unfortunately everything from Grunty's Furnace Fun up until the credits roll is pretty much a write-off from a gameplay standpoint. If you haven't finished it yet, I'd recommend skipping ahead to the timecode in the description to avoid spoilers. 3, 2, 1, spoiler time. With this game being a platformer collectathon, it makes total sense why they decided to make the final level a game show. I mean, an awesome final test of your platforming skills would have been fine, but an obscure, tedious, and unskippable barrage of trivia questions was way better. Whew. Obviously I'm being sarcastic because this level single-handedly brings the fun you feel playing Banjo-Kazooie to a screeching halt. The whole level is a gauntlet where you navigate a huge board game and answer different questions. Some squares have Gruntilda related trivia, some ask questions about different levels and characters, and others ask you to identify a level based on a vague picture. The grunty trivia is somewhat easier, as is the picture identification. But those questions about the game itself are just on another level of obscure. For reference, asking you the number of a certain kind of enemy in a certain area of a certain level. That's not something that most people can just remember, and every time you get a question wrong, you lose a health point. There's also boss squares where you need to beat a recycled boss but with a crazy short time limit, and skull squares which are the same as regular trivia squares, but they drop you straight into lava if you answer incorrectly. You can also acquire joker cards on some squares which let you skip a question, as well as finding health around the board. But this whole sequence is still really difficult. The main reason for that is probably having to start from the beginning of the board every single time you die, which turns every question into an opportunity to lose all your progress. And did I mention that this is the final level of the game? You have to finish this level, it's part of the main story. I don't think that Grunty's Furnace Fun was a terrible idea on paper, but in execution it's a complete slog. It just would have been way more inoffensive as a bonus stage or something, but oh well. After pushing through Grunty's Furnace Fun, you get to watch a genuinely funny fake-out ending, complete with the main characters relaxing by the ocean. When 2D reminds them that Grunty escaped at the end of the last stage, you set off for a final showdown. And look, this boss has some good ideas, but it suffers from the same fate as most rare final bosses do. It's far too long with too many different phases, and it's incredibly easy to die. It does a good job of testing out all the moves you've unlocked during the game, as well as your reflexes, but especially in those last few phases, everything is just way too frantic. That wouldn't be a bad thing on its own, but the final boss highlights the aiming and camera controls in particular don't work well in situations that demand really quick reflexes with a very narrow margin for error. Every level and boss fight up to this point was cleverly designed to compensate for these controls, while still maintaining a steady difficulty curve. The final boss just feels like the developers threw that design philosophy out the window in favor of trying to kill you at every turn. And that's not even mentioning that sometimes the eggs you'll shoot at those Jinjo statues just sometimes won't register a hit. Like, if I'm standing still aiming while fireballs are raining down on me, I want the assurance that I'm not just gonna die because of sloppy hit detection. Overall, this boss fight had some cool ideas, but in execution, it's just plain frustrating. But if these final two gameplay sections were retooled, Banjo-Kazooie would genuinely be a perfect game. And in a lot of ways, it still is, even in spite of glaring imperfections. It's a revolutionary 3D platformer and collectathon with a charming cast of characters, mostly airtight controls, genius level design, a vibrant and goofy aesthetic, and a legendary soundtrack to boot. Banjo-Kazooie, for the most part, has aged beyond gracefully. This is one of those games that manages to make me feel like a kid again, despite the fact that I never played it in my childhood. Despite everything being perfect up until that penultimate leg, however, those last areas left a really sour taste in my mouth. For that reason, I give Banjo-Kazooie an 8.5 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this review of Banjo-Kazooie. If you did, be sure to subscribe, hit the bell for notifications every time that I upload, leave a like, and comment any and all suggestions on how to improve these videos going forward. See you all next time.